I came back from my trip a day early and found strangers walking around my lakeside cabin, taking pictures. Thought I was being robbed. Turns out, Karen from the HOA had listed my cabin online as a luxury weekend rental without telling me. When I confronted her, she panicked and called 911, claiming I was trespassing. She didn't expect me to have security footage, proof of ownership, and a lawyer on speed dial. There are two kinds of silence in the world. There's the kind you get in the suburbs, the muffled sort that still carries the faint sound of leaf blowers and distant traffic. A silence with fences and curfews. The kind that's never quite free. And then there's cabin silence. The kind you only find when you step out onto a dock at 6 in the morning, coffee in hand, and watch the mist roll across your own slice of still water. Where birdsong doesn't compete with car alarms, and the loudest thing for miles is the ripple of a fish surfacing for a breath. That kind of silence, that stillness, is what I grew up chasing, and eventually what I inherited. The lakeside cabin wasn't just property. It was legacy. My father had bought it decades ago when the area was just woods, gravel roads, and curious deer who didn't flinch when you stepped onto the porch. Back then, no one talked about property values or HOAs. There weren't even gates, just neighborly handshakes, shared tools, and enough firewood to get through any winter. When I was a kid, that cabin was our sanctuary. Weekends, holidays, surprise road trips, we'd head straight for the lake, no questions asked. I learned how to get a fish on a back porch, how to start a fire in the rain, how to tell the difference between peaceful solitude and loneliness, and why one was always worth protecting. So when my father passed, there was never any question about what I'd do with the cabin. I kept it, maintained it, made it my own, not by changing it, but by preserving everything that made it sacred. Fast forward a few years. The world got busier. The little towns nearby started developing. Gas stations popped up, then restaurants, then golf courses, and then came the neighborhoods. They started out small. A couple cul-de-sacs with matching mailboxes and smiling sales agents. Then came the fences, the contracts, the rules. And with them came the HOA. To be fair, it didn't start out bad. When the Whisper Pines Lakeside HOA was formed, they only covered the new development across the ridge. The homes were tidy, manicured, the kind with garages you could eat dinner off of and bylaws longer than rental agreements. But the cabin? My cabin? It sat just beyond the edge of that map. The lake technically bordered both zones, but our lot, old as it was grandfathered in. Private deed, pre-HOA, separate well and utilities. Clear title history with decades of unbroken ownership. I didn't need their landscaping. I didn't attend their meetings. I wasn't even on their mailing list. And yet, Karen still found a way to introduce herself. She came over the first time with a clipboard and a lemon cake. Smiling wide, overly friendly, the kind of smile that tells you something's already being written down behind your back. We just wanted to make sure everyone on the lake felt unified, she said, handing me a flyer for the upcoming HOA barbecue. I nodded, smiled politely, and let her speak. She talked about a shared lakeside vision, streamlined safety enforcement, and something about voluntary compliance being the first step toward cooperative living. I just wanted to go back to sanding the dock. Over time, I saw her more often. Sometimes walking a dog she didn't seem to like. Sometimes pretending to jog in jeans. Always finding a reason to slow down when she passed my property line. I never gave her a reason to worry. I kept the place pristine. No parties. No noise. No violations, because there weren't any to violate. Still, I knew the look. The nosiness wasn't about noise. It was about control. Then came the trip. Just a regular out-of-town business stretch. Week and a half, nothing crazy. I did what I always do before leaving the cabin. Shut off the water main, locked the side gates, turned on the camera alerts, and pulled the heavy oak shutters over the front windows. I'd done it 100 times before. It was routine, peaceful even. The cabin didn't need babysitting, just time. I left the key exactly where it always went, in my pocket. No backup copies. No hidden spares under rocks or planters. Not because I was paranoid, but because I'd learned, over time, that the only people who think they might need access to your property are usually the exact ones who never should. I loaded up my truck, drove off, didn't think twice. And that was my mistake. I wasn't supposed to be home that day. The trip had been going fine until a canceled meeting and a last-minute flight opening had me headed home 2 days early. No big reason, just one of those small changes life throws at you. But sometimes those little changes are the ones that catch snakes in the garden. I pulled into the driveway just after noon. Cabin stood like always, calm, quiet, framed by pine and late afternoon light. The gravel crunched under my tires in a way that always made me feel at ease. Only this time, something fell off. At first, it was small stuff. A wind chime hanging on the porch that hadn't been there before. The flower beds, usually untouched, were freshly mulched. Too freshly. And the front door? Locked, yes. But the welcome mat was crooked. I never leave it that way. I walked up slowly. Every instinct in me tightened. Maybe it was a neighbor checking on things. Maybe I was being paranoid. But when I opened the front door, the smell hit me first. Lemon cleaner and fabric softener. Sharp and foreign. My cabin didn't smell like that. It smelled like cedar, aged wood, and a lifetime of peace. Inside, everything was wrong. Clean. Too clean. The couch had throw pillows I'd never seen before. A folded white towel sat neatly at the edge of the bed. There was a gift basket on the kitchen table with a note that said, "Enjoy your stay at Whisper Pines Lakefront Escape." I stood there in silence for a long moment, like my own home had turned into a hotel lobby behind my back. And then I saw it on the counter, a glossy, printed welcome guide. It had my address, my cabin, my lake, and it was branded like a rental, complete with Wi-Fi instructions and an emergency contact number that I didn't recognize. My hand shook as I flipped through it. Check-in instructions, local dining recommendations, a checkout checklist, and at the very bottom, in small print, a phone number with the initials KC next to it. Karen, of course. I pulled out my phone and punched in a few search terms. Didn't take long. There it was. On 3 different vacation rental platforms, my cabin, my private lakeside cabin, was listed as Whisper Pines Lakefront Escape, available for weekend getaways, weekly discounts, and special rates for longer stays. There were 15 photos, taken from inside the home, angles only someone standing in my rooms could capture. My stomach turned as I scrolled past shots of my bed, my grandfather's fishing rods on the wall, the reading nook I'd built into the window frame. Every image felt like a violation. The listings had been up for over a week. I didn't rage. I didn't shout. I started documenting. I took pictures of the altered furniture, the welcome materials, the new linens. I screenshotted the rental listings, downloaded the photos, and emailed them to myself. I checked the trail camera footage and confirmed what I already suspected. Someone had accessed the property using a back route I thought no one knew about. Then I called my lawyer, but I didn't leave. I was home, and now I was watching the crime scene unfold from the inside. That's when the screen door creaked. Karen stood outside with sunglasses perched atop her head, clipboard in hand, and an expression that flickered from smugness to horror in under a second. She hadn't expected anyone to be there. Not yet. Certainly not me. "Oh, I didn't know you were back," she said, voice tight. I didn't say anything, just stared at her. "Is everything okay? We've had some concerns about the property being vacant for so long, and I've been helping maintain appearances." That's when she glanced past me and saw the evidence, the gift basket, the printed guide, the folded towels. The lie was already unraveling, but she still tried to stitch it together. "It's not what it looks like." I stepped outside and locked eyes with her. "Really?" Because what it looks like is someone breaking into my home, staging it for rental, and trespassing on private property. Her lips pressed together. Then, instead of apologizing, instead of doing the human thing, she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she snapped. "You're acting aggressively, and we have HOA protocols about confrontational behavior." I blinked. It was so absurd I almost laughed. "You're calling the cops on the owner of the home?" "I don't know that you are," she barked. "There's been suspicious activity here for months. I've been monitoring it. We thought it was abandoned. You disappeared. I was on vacation, and I never authorized you or anyone to step foot inside my home, let alone list it for rent." She didn't respond, just kept dialing, and I just stood there, calm, focused. Camera already running in my pocket. My lawyer already looped in. The truth already written in black and white on the county recorder's website, and now on 3 rental platforms with her fingerprints all over them. I didn't need to argue. I just waited. For the officers. For the reckoning. For Karen's empire of clipboard power to finally crack in the sunlight. It didn't take long for the sirens to break the silence. 2 squad cars rolled up, gravel crunching beneath their tires, sunlight glinting off their windshields like they were slicing through tension itself. Karen straightened like she'd just won something. Like the cavalry had arrived, and I was about to get dragged off in handcuffs from my own porch. She was even rehearsing her story under her breath as they stepped out. 2 deputies in crisp uniforms, hands resting near their hips but not hostile. Professional. Observant. The first one walked up and nodded politely. "Sir, we got a call about a possible break-in. Can we see some ID?" I didn't flinch. I'd been waiting for this moment. Without a word, I reached into my wallet and handed them my driver's license. Then, I slid over a folder I'd prepared the minute I saw Karen on the porch. A clean, chronological stack of documents. The deed to the cabin. The property survey with my parcel clearly marked. Recent utility bills in my name. Tax receipts going back 5 years. The deputy flipped through them slowly. His eyebrows lifted slightly, the kind of expression you get when reality throws cold water on a bad accusation. Karen, of course, started talking. "Fast. That's not the full story," she said, stepping closer. "You see, this property was left vacant for weeks. We had no way of knowing if it was still maintained. It looked abandoned. We assumed." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation indicating this property was under your jurisdiction?" She blinked. "Well, it's adjacent to HOA land. We've always." "Do you have any legal paperwork, ma'am?" She hesitated. "Not on me, no, but I'm the HOA president. I oversee community safety and neighborhood standards, and this home has been problematic." "Problematic how?" the second officer asked. "You mean quiet and locked up?" Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out, because there was no good answer. No lie she could dress up that would survive the paper trail and the footage. The officer handed me back my documents. "Everything checks out. You clearly own the home. You're well within your rights to be here." Karen's face drained of color. "But he wasn't here. He left." "That doesn't change ownership," the deputy said flatly. "Being on vacation isn't a crime." "And what about the listing?" I added. "Maybe you should take a look at these screenshots. That's my living room in a listing I didn't create. Same goes for my bedroom, my dock, and the private path behind the property. The host listed under the name, Casey. That's Karen's email address, same one she used in HOA correspondence. And this," I said, holding up the welcome guide, "was printed and left on my kitchen counter. It has her number on it." The deputy leaned in and looked. His partner took a photo. Karen backed up a step. "Do you have any proof he didn't approve it?" she said, grasping at straws now. "This could be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe someone else used his name." The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, you're the one who called us. You reported a break-in. You claimed a man was trespassing on private property." He pointed to me. "That man is the legal owner of the home. You're the one who entered a residence you don't own, photographed its interior, and listed it online. You may want to stop talking." Her jaw tightened. "Are you saying I'm in trouble?" "I'm saying you should speak with your attorney. They didn't arrest her. Not then. This wasn't a slap-the-cuffs-on moment. But what it was, and what mattered more, was the shift. The moment the illusion broke. The moment Karen realized her title meant nothing in the face of a deed. That being president of a neighborhood committee doesn't put you above the law, especially not when you've just been caught trying to profit off a home that doesn't belong to you. The officers filed their report. They documented everything, and they left with the same calm professionalism they arrived with. Only now, it was clear who they believed. Karen lingered on the driveway, stunned. I didn't say anything else. Didn't need to, because before the sun set that day, I had already forwarded everything. The screenshots, the documents, the police report reference number, to the Whisper Pines HOA board. I made it simple. No threats, no dramatics. Just the truth, laid out like bricks in a foundation. Unauthorized entry. Unauthorized photography. Unauthorized commercial listing. false emergency report, attempted misrepresentation of ownership. And then I attached one final document, an attorney-drafted letter of formal complaint, citing civil trespass and fraud, and demanding an internal review of Karen's behavior and position. They didn't reply that night, but they didn't need to, because the damage was already done. Karen may have worn the crown in Whisper Pines for years. She may have handed out fines and memos and stood at the center of every bake sale and newsletter draft. But she wasn't untouchable, and when the truth came knocking, it didn't come with fury. It came with evidence. It came with a badge, with property lines, with a homeowner who knew his rights and had just caught her red-handed in front of law enforcement. The reckoning had begun. By the next morning, my complaint was no longer just a private file in my email outbox. It was a paper trail in motion, legal, documented, and with names attached. I didn't write it in anger. Every sentence was measured. Just the facts. Date of entry. Photographic evidence from a listing. My camera logs. Her name, her number, and her public HOA title. All tied to a short-term rental I never approved. I CC'd it to my lawyer, the HOA board, and, for good measure, the city's zoning office. It wasn't personal. It was precise. That same afternoon, I got a reply from a board member. Not Karen, someone else. A quiet guy named Mr. Bradley who'd lived 3 streets down for a decade and rarely spoke up. We've received your documentation and will be convening an emergency board review. Please allow 48 hours for a response. That was all he said, but it was the first crack in the wall. Karen wasn't replying anymore. Not through email. Not through flyers. Not even through her usual smug morning walks in athletic gear. She clearly hadn't sweated in. And then it started. Residents began to whisper. At the coffee stand on Main. At the marina bulletin board. Even a local hardware store clerk raised an eyebrow when I stopped in. Hey, you're the cabin guy, right? The one Karen tried to rent out. Word spread faster than I could have imagined. Not because I said anything. I didn't have to. The screenshots made the rounds on their own. Someone, I still don't know who, leaked them to the community Facebook group. One of the listings was shared with a caption that simply read, "Apparently Karen's been managing more than HOA fines." By noon, it had over 70 comments. 2 days later, the HOA board held its emergency meeting. It was closed door, but word leaked faster than they could tape up the windows. Turns out, Karen hadn't just broken into my cabin. She'd listed it under her personal LLC. That little KC Rentals note at the bottom of the welcome guide, it was tied to a side hustle she'd started quietly last year. No licenses, no permits, no property rights. But she had guts and just enough community influence to make people hesitant to question her. Until now, the board issued a formal response by the following morning. A printed letter on Whisper Pines HOA letterhead. Following a thorough review of documented evidence and in consultation with our legal counsel, the board has determined that President Karen Chambers acted beyond her authority and violated multiple provisions of HOA conduct guidelines. Effective immediately, she is placed on indefinite administrative leave pending further disciplinary review. Translation? She was toast. The same woman who once wrote citations for incorrect mailbox flags had been exposed for trespassing, unauthorized rental profiteering, and falsely calling the police on a legal homeowner. It was glorious. But the most satisfying part? The residents turned. Fast. People who'd once nodded quietly at her reminder memos were now openly posting. I can't believe she listed his place. That's not even part of our HOA. This is embarrassing for the whole neighborhood. If she did that to him, what else has she done? Some started digging. Turns out, this wasn't Karen's first boundary breach, just the first one caught in 4K. She tried to fine a widower down the block for having his daughter's camper in the driveway for more than 72 hours, while she had her cousin's RV parked behind her own garage. Someone even found out she used HOA funds to print the glossy welcome guide she left in my kitchen. Yeah, our HOA fees paid for that. And then came the cherry on top. Local news. Not the big networks, but the town's weekend paper and website. The kind that covers county fairs and new donut shop opens downtown. But this time, the headline read, HOA president accused of illegally renting out private cabin. Police report filed. They reached out for comment. I didn't do an interview. Just confirmed the ownership and pointed them to public documents on file with the county recorder. Karen? She refused to answer their calls. And the next week, she was no longer listed on the HOA's leadership page. The fallout didn't end with embarrassment. The HOA launched a full audit of Karen's actions during her presidency. They discovered misused funds, minor infractions, but enough to confirm she treated the board like her own little empire. Residents voted to install new leadership. Meetings became more transparent. And me? I didn't ask for much. Just a formal acknowledgement that the HOA had no jurisdiction over my land. That, and a quiet apology from a few board members who stopped by, not because they had to, but because they genuinely didn't know how far Karen had gone. I accepted the apologies. Then I updated the locks on every door, reinforced the trail cameras, and posted a small sign at the gate. Private property, no access. Surveillance active. No rentas. No exceptions. Karen didn't stick around for the next HOA meeting. By then, the board had already sent out the email officially confirming what everyone already knew. She was done. Removed. Stripped of her title, her oversight privileges, and every ounce of self-appointed authority she'd used to micromanage the neighborhood like her own little fiefdom. No fanfare, no speech, just silence, the kind she had always tried to control in others, now turned against her. Her house went quiet too. The flagpole she always decorated for holidays stood bare. The folding chair on her porch, where she used to sit with binoculars and a clipboard, vanished. Some say she left town. Others say she stayed, but went into hiding, invisible and embarrassed, hoping time would do what apologies wouldn't. Either way, she was out of sight, and she wasn't coming near my cabin again. The HOA, for all its flaws, did something smart afterward, maybe for damage control, maybe for growth. Doesn't matter to me. They rewrote the access and jurisdiction guidelines. Explicitly, black and white. No board member, president, or committee has any say over properties outside their deeded zone. No exceptions. No community spirit clauses. No loopholes. They even added a clause about unauthorized entry, storage, or access to private dwellings, clearly banned, with fines attached. It was long overdue, but it sent the right message. I didn't throw a party. I didn't give speeches. What I did do was walk the perimeter of my cabin, hammer in a few new signposts, and hang 2 motion sensor cameras that uploaded directly to a cloud I now checked weekly. Then I filed a formal trespass notice with the county, Karen's name in bold, with reference to the police report already on record. If she ever set foot on my property again, there'd be no misunderstanding. There'd be consequences. Permanent ones. As for the cabin itself, it went back to being what it always was, mine, and more peaceful than ever. The chairs stayed dusty between visits. The firewood stayed dry. The lake stayed still. No more surprise welcome guides. No more strange towels. No more signs of someone staging the life they wish they had. Just my life. My rules. My silence. The neighbors started treating me differently, too. Not in a bad way. In a real way. A few waved when I came and went. One brought over a 6-pack and muttered something about being glad the circus ended. Another just said, "Glad you came back early." And that was enough. I didn't need to win anything. I didn't need applause. All I wanted was what I'd always had, a small cabin, a quiet lake, and the freedom to enjoy it without someone thinking their clipboard gave them more rights than my deed. And now, I had that again, with locks, cameras, and clear lines that wouldn't be crossed. If someone thinks they can take what's yours just because you're not home, remind them, ownership doesn't clock out. It doesn't matter if your lights are off, if your truck's not in the driveway, or if the grass grows a little longer than they like. A deed isn't a suggestion. It's a boundary. And it doesn't disappear just because someone decides your absence is more convenient than your presence. Karen thought she could rewrite the rules while I was away. Thought that if she smiled wide enough and printed things in color, no one would look past the brochures. But I came back. I came back early. And I came back with the receipts, the records, the law, and the kind of quiet fury that doesn't need to yell to take back what's his. See, people like her bank on one thing, that you won't push back. That you'll stay quiet, that you'll back down when the police are called. But the law doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one holding the truth. So if someone ever tries to profit off your peace, your cabin, your land, your legacy, don't just argue. Don't just shout. Come home swinging with the law on your side. Because what's yours stays yours.